On January 30th, 1998, Michael Powers woke up from a coma speaking Korean. For months prior, the 24-year-old had been hit by a car while crossing the street. He suffered a traumatic brain injury that put him into a coma for 4 months. When he finally woke up, his parents were overjoyed. It was Christmas Day, and they couldn't wait to tell him about how everyone missed him. But when they approached his bed and asked him how he was feeling, Michael responded in broken but understandable Korean. Neither of his parents knew any Korean. They didn't know if he was even speaking a real language. But then Michael began telling them stories in vivid detail about a life they never heard him talk about. Stories about his childhood, stories about his past. And all of it was in Korea. The more his parents talked with him, the more they realized something was wrong. Michael wasn't just speaking Korean, he was speaking entirely too well. And it wasn't the only thing that was different about him either. As doctors examined Michael, they noticed something else strange, a hole in his memory. Michael couldn't remember anything after 1993. In fact, he couldn't remember much of anything at all from his life before the accident. Instead, Michael remembered an entirely different life, a life as a Korean orphan who grew up in an unnamed Asian country. He told his parents about living in an orphanage, being bullied by other kids, having his tonsils taken out, and playing soccer. Michael also claimed he had a wife and daughter named Jong-soon and Ji-hee. He spoke fondly of the family he left behind when he returned to Korea at age 17 to learn English. And fortunately for Michael, his family could not verify any of this. They don't know where he could have possibly learned this language. At first, Michael seemed sad about forgetting his past, but soon his mood changed. He became angry, agitated, and violent. Michael lashed out at his own parents and hospital staff. He tried to attack his mother and rip out his feeding tube. Michael was sent to a psychiatric ward where he stayed for 6 months. When he was eventually discharged, he went to live with his father who was caring for him because his mother was too scared to be around him. Michael remained angry for some time, even trying to harm himself. But slowly his anger subsided. Michael regained some of his old personality. But he was still not the same. His thoughts were still mostly in Korean. Michael struggled to communicate with his family in English, and he remained confused about who he was. When the Powers family went to the media to tell their story, they received some tips from people who believed they knew who Michael was. A social worker who had worked with Korean adoptions said she believed Michael may have been adopted. Another woman claimed that Michael may have actually been from China. Michael's father reached out to groups that specialized in international adoptions, and they agreed to help him find his roots. One of those groups was the Holt International Children's Services. While combing through adoption records, Holt International discovered a boy who looked exactly like Michael, a boy who had been adopted from Korea. The boy's name was Seung-Hoo Pig, and he was adopted in 1988. Holt International connected the two families, and Michael was finally able to speak with someone who knew about his past. Seung-Hoo told Michael that he was indeed adopted, and that he did have a son and a daughter. But when Michael mentioned his wife, Young-soon, Seung-Hoo said he didn't know what he was talking about. There was no Young-soon. Seung-Hoo told Michael that he knew nothing about the life Michael described, a life that sounded so familiar to Michael yet seemed completely foreign to Seung-Hoo. Michael was confused and frightened, but there was one thing he was sure of. Something happened to him that affected his memory and made him think he was someone else. It took some time, but Michael was eventually able to go back to school and finish his degree. He worked for a software company until another head injury forced him to quit. He married a woman named Tina, but they later divorced. Michael struggled with depression for most of his adult life, and he spent time in mental health facilities. Sadly, Michael passed away in 2007 after taking his own life. While Michael's case was never solved, there are many cases of people waking up from comas and speaking a new language. Most of these cases involve patients who were already bilingual, but there are a few cases of monolingual patients who woke up speaking a second language. So, how is that possible? Foreign language acquisition usually requires intense study and immersion in the language. It typically takes years to reach a conversational level, Yet some people wake up knowing a language they've never studied. Scientists believe this phenomenon can be explained by three things, none of which apply to Michael's case. The first explanation involves two languages activating the same part of the brain. For example, someone who speaks both English and Spanish may have an easier time learning Italian since the similar sentence structure of the two languages allows the brain to apply skills it already knows. Since Michael only spoke one language before his coma, this does not explain how he would have learned another. Another explanation is that memories involving language are stored in different parts of the brain than other memories. Some researchers believe that damage to these areas of the brain can result in foreign language acquisition. However, scientists have found no evidence that supports this theory. The third and final explanation is perhaps the most intriguing. Some experts believe that patients are accessing a subconscious part of their brain that stores forgotten memories, including the memories of a past life. This past life regression theory is not backed by science. It sounds a lot like a reincarnation theory. And let's be honest, we all know how unscientific that is. Now, here's the kicker. Every single explanation for how these people learn languages while in a coma has been discounted by medical professionals because there is no way to replicate it. No matter how hard scientists try, they cannot induce foreign language acquisition in patients under anesthesia. So while there's no concrete answer for why these people wake up speaking a new language, there is a prevailing belief that the explanations are rooted in psychology rather than science. There's a small chance that Michael did indeed learn a language in the coma, but that doesn't explain how he retained the memories of a past life. If Michael really did have a past life, how did his soul end up in the body of a Korean orphan? Did Michael reincarnate into a new body after he died in the coma? Or was he always the Korean orphan and his memories were buried deep within his subconscious mind? Now comment your theories below. What do you think happened to Michael? Do you think he learned a language in the coma, or do you think he had a past life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now check out The Girl Who Predicted 9/11 on the Discovery Channel or watch Weirdest Unsolved Mysteries for another creepy mystery.